There are a ton of gaming laptops available on the market these days, many priced over $1,000. This is typically where you find Asus, and their cheapest Zephyrus G14 configuration starts at $1,200. This super fast, super slim ultrabook with great battery life is definitely a beast, but it's far from cheap. My point is, with so many gaming laptops to go through, all usually selling for well above the 4-digit mark, it can be frustrating to decide which one to pick to not end up disappointed with poor frame rate as a result. Now, to help you guys out, I decided to take a look at a gaming laptop that shouldn't break the bank and holds the potential of providing a high refresh rate display for esport and graphics intense games, all in a very sleek package. This one is called ASUS TUF GAMING FX505, and it comes with pretty high-end specifications such as 16 gigs RAM, 512GB super fast M.2 SSD, an RTX 2060, and a 3rd-gen Ryzen processor. Now, Amazon used to list this for around $1,000, but right now you can pick it up for $899 from Amazon's renewed program. But if you decide to pick up a brand new one, it sits around $1,000, which in other words makes it one of the cheapest laptops with an RTX 2060 GPU. This means that you're getting full support for future games with DX12 Ultimate. Last couple of days, guys, I've been playing games and I've been running benchmarks on this baby, which we're gonna take a look at a bit later. But yeah, in case you're interested in this machine, you find links to where you can pick this up down below. Anyway, is this laptop worth it? Let's find out. So let's start by kicking things off and talk about the build quality for a moment. So the TUF FX505 comes in a stealth black color, but it also seems to be available with gold accents as well. Now, looking at the lid, we see a few jag lines at the top going in a diagonal shape. Now, the lid as well as the base is made of plastic, which is a bit disappointing to see. The good thing at least is that Asus has made sure that there is a minimal flexing, and it definitely doesn't feel cheap in my opinion. It does, however, catch fingerprints quite easily. The machine has been certified with so-called 810G military standard, which means that it can take a lot of punishments. Being able to open up a laptop without having to use both hands is usually a quality indication. Now, obviously try this, and although the hinges are a bit stiff, a single hand opening is still possible. Now, flipping it open, we find a 15.6-inch 1080p IPS 120Hz matte finish screen, and more on this in a second. The interior is plastic with a brushed finish to it. In terms of weights, it lands at about 2.3 kilograms, which is, I would say, about what gaming machines usually weigh. And I do think it is important to stress, guys, that this is not an ultrabook. The advantage of a slightly thicker machine is that Asus been able to fit a pretty nice cooling solution in it to ultimately avoid, heavy throttling, which usually is a common problem on tiny and thin gaming PCs. Now, with that said, let's dive inside and take a look at the full specifications, and let's start with the processor. This machine comes configured with AMD's 3rd-gen Ryzen 5 3550H, but a 3750H configuration is also available, while the 3rd-gen Ryzen, based on Zen 2 on desktop, performs similar to Intel's latest processor. On the mobile side, 3rd-gen Ryzen is nowhere near the desktop counterpart, and there are a lot of reasons for this. First of all, AMD Ryzen 5 3550H is based on the 12nm node Zen+, which basically means that we're looking at the same technology that we find in a desktop-based 2nd-gen Ryzen. It should be said, guys, this is by far this laptop's biggest drawback, and from here on out it only gets better. On the GPU side, we find an RTX 2060, and this is one of the biggest, or perhaps the biggest selling argument for this laptop, point blank. And the mobile RTX 2060 uses the same Turing TU106 chip with the exact same core count and specifications as we find on the desktop variant, where the only difference being the clock speeds, where the base and the turbo clock speeds has been reduced to about 200 to 300 MHz. And as we're about to witness in a second, the 2060 is able to max out many games at 1080p resolution with fairly good results. Now, looking at the display, we see that the bezels are quite thin. Thanks to it being an IPS display, we find that viewing angles are quite good. However, there is no G-Sync support here. It does, however, come with a 120Hz refresh rate, rated at 3 millisecond response time, which is quite impressive impressive knowing that we're looking at an IPS display, and overall it's a fast, responsive and a good looking display, and I think most people gonna use this for gaming won't be disappointed here. As for ports etc, we find everything located conveniently on the left side, and here we find a power input, we find gigabit Ethernet, we find HDMI 2.0, 3 USB Type A ports, a 3.5mm audio jack, but sadly there is no Type C on this laptop. The speakers are located on either side of the front, but to no surprise guys, quality of the speakers is not very impressive, but this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Asus has fitted the laptop with a chiclet keyboard with single zone RGB lighting that can be customized in the Asus Armory Crate software, which we're gonna take a look at in just a second. And here you find a wide array of different profiles. As for keyboard layout, I'm not too sure if I'm a big fan of this or not. For example, the WA and SD keys are highlighted and the spacebar is slightly bigger than usual. Now the keys have a travel distance of 1.8mm and it requires about 60 grams of force to activate the switch, and this is about as much as you need to activate the Sherry MX Blue. It's a good keyboard and there is not much else to say. The touchpad, however, is pretty terrible, and while it definitely gets the job done, it has a very cheap touch to it and I don't really like it one bit, so my recommendation is to stick to a mouse and you will be more than happy with that. So let's talk about the software. So once you boot up Windows, you'll find a pre-installed software called Armory Crate, which honestly is a quite nifty software as it allows customization of the hardware in a very simplistic approach. Here you can adjust the CPU performance, GPU performance, cooling and even noise and power savings in a very convenient way. We also find a couple of predefined profiles. We got Windows, Silent, Performance and Turbo. How to figure out which profile to choose and to put the cooling solution to the test, I decided to run a couple of stress tests. And as for the cooling capacity, it's definitely clear that the cooling is definitely sufficient for this type of machine. I'm happy to say guys that the case not really gets too hot compared to some of the laptops that I've tested in the past. This kind of leads us over to system fan noise, which usually can be an issue on gaming laptops. And in the same breath guys, I want to say that I don't recommend using the turbo profile here as it sets the fan to 100%, and this is basically what it sounds like. The silent profile on the other hand definitely gave me thermal throttling, and so my recommendation is having the system set to balance performance, as this gave me the best overall performance without any throttling, while the fan noise stayed on an acceptable level. As for upgradability, we do find a empty 2.5-inch bay for SATA disk drives. We also find another M.2 slot here, so in other words, plenty of options in case you wanna, you wanna get a bit more storage. Now before we jump into gaming, let's talk about the display for a second. As for backlight bleed, we can see that there are some visible clouding and edge bleed here, but this is about what to expect from a panel at this budget. The maximum brightness of the screen is about 300 nits, which is not bad. That being said, it is not bright enough for outside gaming in my opinion, and overall I would say the display is impressive for what it's meant for. The 120Hz is nice, colors feels vivid, and the viewing angles aren't that bad either. And so in conclusion, I definitely think most people will be satisfied here. I decided to run all games at high settings at 1080p resolution. As can be seen, we're seeing fairly low minimum frame rates in some of the AAA games, and this is definitely due to the processor. It is obvious that it's a bottleneck for the system. This becomes extremely obvious when lowering the graphic settings to let the processor do most of the work. Therefore, I highly recommend cranking up the settings all the way to ultra to shift over the load from the CPU to the GPU instead. However, if you do want to take advantage of the 120Hz display, I do recommend that you lower the settings to perhaps low in those games where frame rate really matters. I do want to stress the fact, in case you do not planning on playing, heavy, graphically intense AAA games, I would rather opt for the Asus Helios, for example, who uses a much faster processor. As for battery life, it lasted me about 2.5 hours of movie watching with 50% brightness and about an hour of gaming, which isn't great, but it's not terrible either. You shouldn't expect any longer lasting gaming sessions on the go here, so you wanna make sure to always carry the battery brick wherever you go. Anyway guys, for $900 this is a brilliant laptop, and if you are thinking about pulling the trigger here, I do recommend you pick up the renewed variant from Amazon, as this one is $100 cheaper than if you pick up a new one. Amazon Renewed means that it has been opened and it has been tested, however it still feels like new, and the difference is also that you get 3 months of warranty instead of a full year. The cool thing is that you save $100, but even if you, let's say, pick up a new one at $1,000, this is still a pretty good deal. That being said, I wouldn't spend $1,100 or $1,200 for this machine, as there are better options out there, so I simply don't recommend spending anything more than $1,000. On the con side, the obvious letdown on this machine is the 4-core Ryzen CPU, but this is also the only real con that I can think of on top of my head. Again guys, links can be found down below, and in case you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Now watch either of these two videos to learn more, and I will see you guys in the next video.